Hi, this is Suzanne in Ohio. Hey, the last time I left you with a fabric arts video, we had put together this little fabric collage type of thing, which is intended to be a journal cover. You could turn this into anything you want, the front of a tote bag or anything like that. But what I left you with was the thoughts of how to get a background, a feature, and what I want to do today is add some embellishments in the way of scraps, lace, fibers, textiles. So what I did was I literally reached into my cart and got a handful and put it in this little basket with no pre-thought of anything. Now, I have all this stuff because I save it. If I don't throw anything away that's bigger than a postage stamp. So I have lots of this stuff. And now I always figure, hey, when I'm dead and gone, somebody else can throw it away if they don't need it or don't want it. But in the meantime, I have it to work with. So let's just pull some things out of this basket and add them as embellishments to what we have going here. Now, I have some white, I have some cream, I have these shades of wine, so let's just throw a few things out here and see what we like. And piece of an old, that doesn't go. I've got this in that colorway, that might work. And got big pieces of this edging. It was a crocheted edge off of a pillowcase. That's quite long, and I don't necessarily want to cut into it. I have a real, oh, I don't know what you call it, mantra that everything to the highest and best use, especially if it's kind of special. I'm real careful about just whacking into something that I might never be able to replace again. So I'm searching in here. Oh, I like this because it has the texture of that soft tablecloth type texture. And then we even have a piece of, oh, well, that was by accident. But see, there's some brown in that. Do I want to bring that out or forget that? Uh, Scraps of fabric, yarn, lace, different textures will add a lot what you're doing. I always look at something, and even if it matches, I try to say, does it need it? Does it need it? Or is it okay without it? Wrong color, wrong, kind of fights with it. All right. I even have a little scrap of a vintage handkerchief there. Okay. Here's a piece of just a scrap of very old linen. Obviously, something has been cut out of it. Let's see if we can use it. Now, I see a piece of light blue in here, and I do have the same light blue there. So let's use these things for consideration, and I'll just show you how my mind works. I like to put things where they're going to be the most eye-catching, and a YouTube video taught me years ago, connect your elements together. So I could put that piece of that crochet right there, but it's better if I bring it over here and overlap this and overlap that, because then it starts to incorporate all of those elements right there. I will snip that off. That's just kind of wayward. And oh, I might throw that away. It's smaller than a postage stamp. And then this, look, it was the lining off of something. Now, I'm not going to sit here and bother taking all that apart, But what I will do is snip off that piece of twill tape or whatever that was, and then play around with this and see if I like the organicness of it and see if I can put it somewhere. Now I want to keep it in mind that this is going to fold right here on this line because it's a journal cover. If I were going to use it for something else, I would go ahead and bring my heavy design over this way. I just don't want anything right here in the line where it's going to fold. That's just going to create problems. All right, let's see. Could we use this? Which color, which side is better? I like the lighter one for right now. I could tuck it right under here, and it becomes an extension of that same piece of blue lace that's on that little collage. I like this little scrap of this tablecloth, but which side? I think this side. I think I will just corner that off right there and let that fill in the corner. Now, I didn't realize this is a soft kind of robin egg blue. Doesn't go, so I'm going to throw that back in there. I've got a little piece of this, and that works good. Let's see. I think I would probably do this because that begins to combine these. I like this little white lace. There's some white up there. I could even go something like this. And that gives an interest to the back. Do I need this? Well, I don't know. Maybe I need something heavier down here to anchor this and give it some weight on the bottom. Let me look one more time in here. I think I'm going to have to break down and cut a piece of that crocheted edging off. Yes, I guess I will. Not a horrendous piece, but some of it. Now, that crochet has a scallop on it, which I will, when I stitch this down, I'll pull that down and make sure I stitch that in such a way that you can readily see that that has that scalloped edge to it. I think I will, because this is a curve, I'm just going to mount it right on the upper edge of that, and let's get some pins and just keep it in place. And then what I'm going to have to do is turn this right side up and look at it. Sometimes, I don't know if I have a learning disability or what, but sometimes I cannot even see color correctly unless I'm looking at it right side up. I understand that in art school they make students practice working on pieces upside down. Well, I must have that piece of my brain missing. That just don't work for me. Can't make heads or tails of it. But let's say we're going to put that there, tuck that on the corner. I can replace that pin with that. And get things stabilized here. And then I'll turn it around and look at it. There's no need in covering up my little bit of decorative embroidery there. So I'll pull that down and replace this. This will hold all the layers, go straight through. Same thing here. And I do believe I'm going to tuck this one underneath this one because I have plenty of that visible. Now, When you're deciding what to put on your surface, keep in mind that you can add more texture and more layers with your stitching. Now let's talk about the stitching for a minute. As I said before, you could take this to the sewing machine and do a freestyle, free motion sewing on top of this, and it would still look great. But I tend to want to do by hand. I like that puckery, quilty kind of look about it. So the first question I'll ask myself is, do I want to do an invisible stitch, such as just to get it in place, or do I want to stitch down with embroidery thread and make the embroidery thread part of my design? On lots of things, I add some embroidery, but it's not everything. Um, Sometimes I let my little quilty stitch be part of the design. In any case, I have a few needles threaded with embroidery thread, and I'll just show you how I go about that. But for starters, I want to turn it around and ask myself, does it need anything? Okay, I can see one thing that I don't care for, and that is this. Yes, I want to overlap, but I don't want it to be smack dab in the center like that. It's just too predictable to the brain. I like something just a little bit different. So now remember, this has a hidden pocket. So what I'm going to do is tuck that underneath the edge there, and I will stitch that down, but I'm not going to stitch the pocket to it. I'm only going to stitch the pocket going around these three sides, because this will be an invisible pocket, like we said earlier. Okay, now I'm beginning to ask myself, where would I want to stitch? And I really want to stitch where I'm going to capture the most edges, and that will stabilize my piece, and then I can move on from there. I think I would start stitching this one because it's going to capture this, this, and everything underneath it. So let me just show you how we go about it. First, I'm going to decide, is it going to be a neat stitch, a sloppy stitch, just a whip stitch, or am I going to do a fancy embroidery stitch? And this is so busy, it doesn't matter. But what color? I mean, it doesn't matter if I use a plain stitch, but what color? And I really would like to add a little bit more of this green, because I have some dark green here and some there. But if I add some dark green thread on top of that, then you can see that I'm adding to the colorway. And let's get down just a little closer. And I've already got my needle threaded, but I wanted to wait a minute and show you how I tie my knot. I learned how to tie a quilter's knot a couple years ago. Now, if you're quilting, you have to learn this knot, because the purpose is to put your needle in, slide the thread all the way in, and give it a little yank, and then that quilter's knot goes inside. So you have no visible knot anywhere. But still, it's a very neat knot, and I like to use it even for other things. So what you do is, I have my thread over here. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to lay it across my finger. And I'm going to capture that thread right there under the needle. Now I'm going to go around 3 times. Now I'm going to pinch it with my other finger, push the needle up through, and holding on to that thread, then I'm going to pull it through, and I have an automatic knot. And the only reason that looks a little messy is some of the tails got caught. Now I have 3 strands of floss here. If I'm using a DMC, sometimes I don't always use 3 strands, because if the pigment is dark and stiff, that gets too clunky for me. If it's a cheap off-brand kind of floss, then most of the time it's 3 strands because their ply is it's just not as hefty. So now I know this is going to look upside down to you, but what I want to do is just let you watch while I get started with this. And then I'll turn it back around. But I can't work upside down, so let's work this way. Now, just a note about this. What I want to do is go all the way through with any stitches that I possibly can because I'm making a sandwich here. I have this piece of muslin as a sort of as a stabilizer. And that is what I think of it as because I could have replaced that with a very thin piece of Pellon, but I like the softness of this. And I use Pellon on plenty of things for other reasons, but this a little bit softer, a little bit more give to it. So that's my first layer, and then I have a layer of that felt, and then I have my collage layers. So I can either start on the outside with this, and sometimes I will, and I let my knot show. I don't care about things like that on fabric collage because that's part of the uniqueness of it. That's part of what makes it interesting. All that textile and tactile things add to your piece. Now I would just want to make sure the little edge of this comes right up here on top of my puffy. That's what I call my little collages. And I'll just hold that with my thumb and I can feel it as I go, and I want to make sure that it overlaps. And I'm just going to take big in and out stitches, and I did not make myself a thimble, so bear with me. And I don't have my wax real close, but big in and out stitches so they're real visible and they become a design element all by themselves. Now you won't have to sit there and watch me do this whole thing, but I wanted you to see how I start. I hope you got a little fabric collage together and have it ready. If not, get one together and come back and watch this video again or watch the next one and stitch with me. And then we'll both get more mentally healthy because of it. Because it is so therapeutic, so stress relieving, and then you have something beautiful and useful to show for your time. And see, I have very little fabric here to catch, but I'm going to do my best to stay in the fibers that are strong enough. And here's where I really need my thimble. I don't have a real thimble. I can't wear one, never could, but I make myself a little cardboard thimble every time I sew. And boy, is that wonderful. I just love it. I find myself wearing it around the house the rest of the day because it's so comfortable I forget I have it on. When I notice that it gets wet when I wash my hands, then voila. Now, I'm just going to let that take its natural curve down, and let's take a couple more stitches here. Now, I would just like to say, don't forget that what we do, our fabric arts, our paper arts, nothing is perfection. It's the imperfection that is so quaint and so wonderful, and what makes things so interesting. I have a terrible habit of being too rigid. I really do. I was a garment sewer, and by golly, everything had to be perfect. And it took me a long time to come out of that mindset of perfection, straight edges, neat, finished off. Oh, forget it. Now here I am there, right there, and I still have plenty of thread on my needle. So what could I do? I could come up right here in this piece of burgundy, or wine color, I should say. And I could go ahead and stitch down this edge. And I can use any kind of stitch I want. Let's do just a couple cross stitches. Now, many of you out there probably know far more embroidery stitches than I do. I don't know very many of the decorative stitches. I'm a real good embroiderer as far as following the lines and my stitches even and neat. My mother taught me and she was an expert. Nothing looked coarse or chunky. Every little stitch fit right in next to each other and overlapped slightly like it's supposed to. And I'm a good, that kind of embroiderer. But as far as knowing embroidery stitches, I don't. And the frugal part of me is not crazy about some of them because they use so much darn thread. Now, why I'm hoarding all my thread at this age in my life, I do not know. Now, oh, I hope I have not been off camera. I've got what will be 4 cross stitches right here. And then because I still have thread in my needle, I can go along this edge, but I'll change my stitch. So I'm just going to go in here and up. And then I want to show you that I'm coming all the way through with my stitches. I'm creating my sandwich, embedding my sandwich together. So let's just take a couple long running stitches, more of it visible than not, and real long one, tiny little in and out, and that leaves me lots of that green thread visible on this side. Okay, all right, you get that idea. So I'm just going to stop right there with that one, and I have a couple more needles threaded. So let's jump somewhere else and see what we might do. I've got a real nice cream color here. Whoop, jerked out 2 needles together. And I've got this cream color, and I could use that to stitch this down. So again, a quilter's knot. I'm going to grab it, press it hard underneath the needle, wrap the end around 3 times, pinch it with my other finger, and slide through. And there I have a quilter's knot. I know it keeps jumping out of the screen. So I'll just work on this from this angle. And I would go about not trying to capture all of these loose edges on this piece because, hey, that's what makes it quaint. I like that raggedy edge look and all those little pieces of that textile sticking out. I like it. So I sure don't want to stitch it down so tight that I give up all that movement there. And just jump right over here and just catch part of that. And because that's so thick there, I'm going to pull my needle through in the back. Whoop, got a little loop. Got a little loop. Get it off of there and pull it through. And then come back and capture that tip of that little textile. You can see how loosey-goosey it is because it's just a scrap. It's in the process of fraying. That's what makes it so wonderful. Okay, now I'll just jump over here and get these little, what you could possibly think of as tips of leaves or petals or something. And let's just do one more and then we'll switch to something different. And I'll leave it for a later time. I hope your brain is churning and asking yourself, what could you work on? What could you get and do some slow stitching? Now, you know, the term slow stitching has really picked up some momentum out there in YouTube crafty land. Embroidery and quilting has always been slow stitching. And, you know, the Japanese stitches, there's two different kinds of them. Those have always been slow stitching. But somebody came up with that term and have launched it out there into Never Never Land as something brand new. It's not brand new. In anything that you're doing by hand automatically ends up slow stitching. So you might have a different idea in your mind what slow stitching is because of some other tutorial or something you've seen. And it could be the Japanese stitches, or it could just be embroidery, or it could just that in and out, just rows and rows of compacted stitches. That's fine if that's your idea of slow stitching. But also, please incorporate the whole concept of quilting and embroidery. Those are slow stitches as well. Nothing new under the sun, right? All right, now in my wisdom, what I know I should do is stitch this down, because what I need to do is lift this pocket up, pin it backwards out of my way for a minute, and go all the way around this little rosette type of thing. Now, I really would like to have white thread and just do that kind of invisible, but I didn't thread a white needle, but I have light pink. So I'm going to make another quilter's knot here, and I'm just going to do this for the sake of keeping this in place underneath the edge of this pocket. So I'm just going to go in and out enough to catch this little crocheted rosette, which was cut off of a dresser scarf, I believe, and just do enough stitching to make sure that's down and that won't interfere with anything that someone might want to put in that pocket. And I've got a nice sharp needle this time. Good one, Suzanne. I should sort out my needles and get all my good ones ready. Oh, they've gotten messed up and mixed up. I had a sewing class at my house all last winter, and I put out tons of needles and straight pins and everything for people to use, and you know how that goes. You never know where half of them got to, and they're all mixed up. There is nothing like a good needle. And I love this needle that's in my hand right now because it is long. It might even be considered a doll needle, one of the shorter doll needles. But it's good steel and it's slick and it's very sharp and it's very strong. And you can see I'm almost all the way around there. So I'm just going to quit that for now and fold the edge of this pocket back up. And we can see how it's going to tuck right under that edge. So the next thing I should do is secure this side of this pocket up this way. Now at this point I could say to myself, you know, I could add buttons, I could add yo-yos, I could add more lace, I could do anything I want to do. As a matter of fact, I thought I had a yo-yo in this. Oh, I do. I've got one yo-yo. Look at that. The perfect right color, too. It was in the same basket of stuff here. So let me ask where it serves the best, highest in use. That's going to be right on the fold. So I'm not going to do that. That's going to be on the fold. Maybe it should tuck right under the edge of that, sort of, and off to the side slightly, and then I'll put a button right in the center of it. That's kind of nice. I guess one other thing I could do is I could mount it right on top of that rosin. I like that also. I think I'll do that. And then put a button in the center of it, which I won't get around to today, but because I need white or pink thread to sew that on. Or you could not even sew it on, you could just attach it as you attach your button. Well, I hope this has given you some ideas, and I want to get you started on some kind of fabric collage. Whether you want to use them for a journal cover or the front of a tote bag or a book cover, of, such as a Bible cover or something like that. Or maybe you just want to make a fabric collage and put a little tab on it for hanging and give it as a gift. If you give something as a gift or even a journal cover, you might want to consider some kind of a placard on here that maybe holds a thought-provoking word. Or you might want to think about adding a placard out of paper after you get done. So let me just cut a little piece of cardboard here. And this is cardstock, good cardstock. And you can see how you could either do it out of cardstock and paper, such as, or you could do it out of fabric and put, a second layer in there, stitch around it, and write a word on it. Now, if you put a word on it, you can either embroider the word, stamp it with an alphabet stamp, write it on with micron pens or permanent ultra Sharpie markers, just anything you want to do. You could even tear this, or we can take the corners off and punch a hole in it as if it's a tag. So there's endless ideas what to do with your work. So there you have my ideas for today, and my goal was to get you jump started into something. So I want to thank you for watching, and I want you to come back real soon. I will have most of this stitched, and I will show you how to put the lining on the inside, go around the edges, and maybe add some pockets on the inside. All right, thanks for watching. If you're interested in fabric art, please give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment, and I'll be back real soon. Bye-bye.